Ladies and gentlemen, today is March 19th, 2013, and this is the KNKL Show, episode 74, where we learn to be better artists. I am your host, Kienan Lafferty, and today we are going to be doing a tutorial on drawing manly faces. But before we get into that, we need to take a moment to take a stroll down the lovely lane. We have some new awesome submissions coming in from Jessica Steele. Thank you, Jessica. As well as Akiro, Alicia, and many other awesome people such as Less Than Pi, Vincent, and oh, I didn't even see this one yet, from Pepe. So I wanted to take the time to say thank you guys for submitting your awesome artwork to the KNKL Facebook page, and continue to do so because it makes me oh so happy. Moving on to the Twitter. Wow, we haven't actually talked about the Twitter in a little while. If you're not following me on Twitter, please do so because I will not bug you when I am at the beach playing with sand crabs or making sandcastles, but I will update you when I am liking certain videos on YouTube, as well as posting new content to the YouTube page. Alright, people. It is time for a moment we've all been waiting for, and you, right there, are going to be the first one to know this, unless you have been stalking the Emma page like some sort of crazy person for the last 10 minutes, because Issue 2 is finally released, and we can rejoice, and we can all be so very happy. So we are going to be doing a lesson today, so I expect that all of you will pay attention to me throughout the entire lesson. You will not be distracted by this, but if you want to go ahead and pull this up and check it out on the side, that's cool, or you can check it out after the show, but it is up, and I'm so happy, so relieved about that, and now we are going to draw manly faces. So let's go ahead and move into the tutorial. Alrighty then. And I'll be doing like a formal Facebook post and Twitter and all that stuff. But for the people that watch the show live, who are here up early in the morning in Sweden, I figured you should be the first to know and be the first to take a look at that. Alright, so we're actually going to be working with manly faces, and we're going to be working in the style of basically the comic, right? The kind of style that I like to draw the manly faces in the comic. I'm going to show you guys kind of a general idea how I like to set those up. And you can actually translate this to real life as well. So let's go ahead and get that started. And yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. So the first thing we're going to start with is a circle. Imagine that. Imagine that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to divide that circle in half. And I think today we'll focus on the front, and maybe we'll go. I definitely want to do a 3/4 perspective as well. So we'll just start with the front, and then I'll show you how I lay out the measurements here. So what I do is I take the measurement from here to here, right, this distance, and then I drop it down again. I basically duplicate that same distance down once again. So that's going to take us to about right there. Okay? And then that is going to be our chin, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go just below that midpoint there, and that is going to be our eyes. It's going to be the place of our eyes. So let's go ahead and let's draw in some eyes here. And really what you can do is I challenge you to have fun with creating your own type of eye shapes. Like if you were to do Tank's eyes, let's draw Tank's eyes. Tank is from the comic, obviously, if you haven't heard of him yet. Tank is from my comic, and his eyes go in such a way as this, right? You draw them down like that, and then the edges come in like that, right? Then he has like these big old mean eyebrows that come down like that. And he has that thing going on, right? So he looks like a combination of tired and ticked off at the same time. So you do one of those things. So that's a way that you can kind of start to draw in kind of stylistic eyes. But just for the tutorial, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone and not draw a character from my comic. That way I'm forced to make up things. And I like that. I like coming up with things on the spot. And a good way to think of how far apart the eyes should be, generally I like to position them. A lot of people say you should put one eye in between, and that's a good baseline to go off of. Like if you have, let's draw this guy with like more almond-shaped eyes, right? Let's give him some more like almond-shaped eyes so they kind of come down like this. All right? And so a general good rule is if you were to take one of those eyes and place it in between, that's about how far apart your eyes should be. But you guys have heard that. You guys have seen that all the time in those little how to draw faces books. And, you know, it doesn't always have to follow that exact frame, but it's a good baseline. So pay attention. All right, so moving on, let's go ahead and give this guy, let's go ahead and draw on the pupils here. And this is going to be a more cartoony guy today. And then we can actually go into more, realistic faces at another date. But today, after just finishing everything up, I want to kind of take it a little bit easy. And plus, I think it's actually good. I love learning principles and like cartoony styles first, and then kind of pushing it over to like realism. I think it's actually really fun to do it that way. I never thought about that way of learning before, but it's definitely legitimate. Learn it in a simplified state first. Let's give him some nice bushy eyebrows, you know, because manly men have nice bushy eyebrows. Cool. All right, I'm liking that so far. And you'll notice how I kind of like push these in. And basically what that is, it's the furrowing of the brow. You know, like when you push your eyebrows in, kind of scrunches up the skin right there. And then oftentimes it creates what people call the 11 wrinkle, which is basically these two lines that go up like that, right? They push in, and then they meet the bridge of the nose. And the nose comes down like that. Now, when I'm drawing a simplified cartoonistic male, I usually like to simplify the nose down to just a few simple shapes. It's almost like an elongated M. I really like to do that because it very, very quickly shows the shape of the nose, as well as those little M shapes represent the nostrils on the side. Okay, and then this represents the cast shadow if you were to push that middle part of the M down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of erase these guidelines a little bit out. And we're going to just go ahead and continue here. Okay, so another thing that I like to do is just kind of like put these lines here. This represents like the edges of the nose, right? The edges of the nose and the skull. And yeah, it's just nice to put those there. It's good. You can put in like some eyelid lines if you want them to look a little bit more like ticked off, a little bit older. And generally when I'm drawing more manly men, I usually like to make them look just a little bit older, a little more grizzled, a little more ticked off. And that is good. And just as I always teach this, like when you're drawing noses, a good way to remember how noses work is you bring up the nostril like this. If you were to continue drawing this nose, bring up the nostril like that. And I almost like to think about this little triangle shape that occurs right here, right? This triangle shape is almost like where the shading begins. And then you have like this thing here if you were to go ahead and start shading it. Something like that, yes. But for the purposes of the exercise, we're going to go ahead and just kind of play that down a little bit. Same with the nostrils. Usually not to like, I usually like to not make those super prominent, generally speaking. But that's a very, very simplified way to draw a nose. Just think about the nostril and then draw that triangle that connects with the bridge, okay? Moving on, we're going to go ahead and drop it down to the lips, right? You want to think about that little teardrop shape that happens right there. And then you're going to have the lips. And again, you'll notice how I'm just kind of like, I'm placing things. Like you can measure, it's like, oh, from this distance to here, or the lips are this far down from the nose. You know, it really, the differences that you make here, like you could place the mouth further down. Like in fact, I'm just going to show you what happens when you place the mouth down further. It's going to change the type of character that you have. You know, see, the further down you go, it makes them look different. Like if you were to place the mouth down here, it's going to give him this impression of like sagging, you know, like sagging jowls. He's going to look much older, right? And then if you couple that with like really, really accentuated cheekbones, like he looks very old, right? But by contrast, if we basically move that mouth back up and then we shape the face to how it's going to work with that, he's going to look much more young. He's going to have this big, massive chin, which is, in my opinion, indispensable for drawing manly men. You must have good, strong chin. Good, strong chin, nice, thick jawline. And you can accentuate the cheekbone a little bit, and it almost follows exactly that circle, right? I like the fact that it kind of follows that circle, almost to the T. Let's go ahead and bring this up here. And then I like to draw like a little triangle, like same with the cast shadow that's happening here, right, on the nose. Sometimes I like to erase a little bit underneath that, kind of like represents the reflected light on the underside of the nose. Really like doing that. But I also like to draw the drop shadow that's happening with this cheekbone here, right? If we were to simplify that down to said things there. Okay, I need to check over here to make sure everything is going okay. Oh, I just had the... Oh. You know that feeling you get when you feel like the microphone is not working? Oh, man. Ooh, that's scary. There's not many feelings like that. Let's see. Is that what could have... Logan. Anyway, I also said something bad. I don't want to give away the comic. You guys over here are talking about, you know, what's going on in the comic, and I don't want to give it away to the people on YouTube that are going to be watching this later. All right. So let's go ahead and continue. And the answer is, one person was asking the question is his chin going to be too far down? And the question is do you want it to be that far down? Personally, for this exaggerated kind of cartoon style, I personally don't think it's too far down. I personally like it. But again, it's all because of the measurement. We decided that the chin was going to be exactly half another circle down. But you could easily lasso this, especially where there's straight lines. You can lasso things and just move things up. So you can make his chin smaller. And notice how it completely changes his character depending on where his chin is. So I'll move it up just a teensy bit. And let's go for that. Okay? So this is very much like Tank's face, to be honest. This is very much Tank's facial structure. Right? We're going ahead and bringing this right back up. And notice kind of how the difference or the relationship between the edge of the circle and where the chin drops down, right? So we're going to do the same thing here. Edge of the circle, chin is right there. So we know to the best of our ability from this angle until we flip the canvas, we know that we are making a semi proportional and symmetrical face. And keep in mind, not all faces are exactly symmetrical either, so they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be perfect, but they should be at least nice to look at. All right, so continuing. You can throw in like a little iris. Sometimes I like to go and just like erase things. I find that giving characters irises makes them look a lot different, to be honest. It makes them look oftentimes a little bit more sinister, especially if they're like a manly man with this type of face. You give them irises, they tend to look a little bit more serious. I would have done it in the comic, like with Tank, but a big thing that I'm pushing stylistically is that none of the characters have irises. They all have like kind of like an old-fashioned cartoon, just solid eyeball. I really like that. All right, so we are getting, and this is kind of cool because I'm thinking about how this is comparing to, you know, like the old, the female face that we did. All right, so another thing that I'm noticing is because of this, you want to make sure, like generally, there's a rule that says like the eyes are usually halfway between the head or halfway into the head. And because we're working with like a cartoony style, I think it's fine that he has like a smaller head. In fact, I think giving guys like a smaller forehead makes them look, again, even more kind of alpha because it's like they're all about brute force and not so much about, you know, their smarts. They got a tiny little brain in there. So, but if we were to measure this out from the eyes to the chin, let's go ahead and just make a measurement. If we wanted to make his head a little bit more realistic, kind of go from half the eye to the chin. Let's kind of grab that there. And I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and measure that up and see how much further his head would have to come up to be more realistic. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. I'm going to show you a little bit more how you would go about making this head a little more realistic, right? Obviously, the eyes are generally in about the halfway point. So if you wanted to make a guy's head a little bit more realistic, it's probably going to look a little bit more like this, right? So you're going to bring his head up a little bit more. And again, this all plays into your stylistic choices, right? His head might look a little bit like a brainiac at first, but let's see. Let's see what it does. And to be honest, yeah, that actually looks about right. That is definitely more proportional. It might look a little weird because he doesn't have any like ears yet, but once we put on the ears, it'll look a lot more, I'm guessing it'll look a lot more realistic. or a little bit more properly proportioned. So let's go ahead and throw on dim ears. We want this guy looking like what's that guy? Super villain? Who's the super villain that wants to? I forgot the name of that cartoon. What was it? The big blue-headed guy, right? The super villain that's trying to get back at the superhero. He just wants to be a good villain. Anybody who remembers the name of the big blue-headed villain guy from that one animated series, please post that in the chat. And you'll notice that I'm actually bringing the head out a little bit more, right? Because the skull, it actually it kind of tapers just a little bit in here. And these are your temples, right? These are your temples. This is where your sideburns come down when you have hair, obviously. And then you could draw in the hair like this. Okay, so that's just an example of how you can play with both the chin as well as the height of the head to create different feels of your character, right? If you have this guy and you were to give him kind of like a buzz cut, type of like an army thing, right? Like a chip hazard. Like for those of you who saw Small Soldiers, this is very much the design of the soldiers. They're very, very brute forcey. They got tiny little heads, and it just adds to their character, right? Because they're all about just being like these rough and tough army dudes. You know, they shoot first, ask questions later, and they just want to kill the Gorgonites. The Gorgonites, scum. And so you do something like that, right? And so you notice, right? See, now you have a different character, right? Obviously, his head could not even extend up to that point, but you have a very, very cool looking character, and it helps to push a little bit more of what that guy's about. With the proportional choices, you choose to exaggerate, right? And this can go a little bit more into like caricatures and stuff, but actually I still need to learn a lot about caricatures myself. I love people that can do good caricatures. And there's some good science that goes into it. And once I learn more about that, I'll be happy to teach you guys about that. In fact, I think that'll be a really fun tutorial I could give you guys, how to do caricatures. And you can go draw like your mom and dad or your girlfriend or your best friend. And they'll be like, I don't look like that, because you draw them like a giant nose and like big old buck teeth. When really, if you're a good caricature artist, you can still make them look like that, even if you exaggerate any part of them. They just got to be ready to take it. All right, so now you can see you have two different types of proportions. I'm going to go ahead and keep working with our army dude over here, because this is a little bit more about our proportions, or a little bit more about exaggerating and creating memorable cartoon character proportions. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a mustache here too. And this is really the fun point. Like when I'm concepting characters, I like to come up with facial hair, right? I'll just kind of draw in shapes, see what it makes him look like. Now he looks much more suave, debonair. But I don't know. He definitely doesn't look like an army dude. Army dude with mustache doesn't look very good. So I'm just going to keep him clean cut for now. And let's go ahead and just draw down. Another thing that I love to do on guys to make them look more manly is actually have the neck show over the edge of their jawline, right? So their neck will come down much more like this, right? And they'll have like these giant traps that come out like that. And their collarbones are very V'd out. They go up like that. And then you just kind of connect those lines up there. And then oftentimes I like to draw like a little cast shadow down here. I'm really, really big on cast shadows. Those are tons of fun, and because that cast shadow is going that way, we got to make sure we are consistent, and the other cast shadows also go that way. All right, this is very much like a Street Fighter type of thing to do. Like you'll notice the guys and their necks are just massive, right? And they got these huge traps that just overflow into like these gigantic, shoulders. So yeah, and again, the whole anatomy thing, I've done tutorials on anatomy. So if you guys are curious about learning the muscles and stuff, simply go check those out. Yes. Okay. So I said I wanted to also do a 3/4 perspective. So let's go ahead and take this guy's face here, this general clean-cut army dude's face, and let's draw it in 3/4 perspective. And I'll show you how to take the same measurements and do the same thing. Okay. Dr. Manhattan. My men always come out girly. Somebody says over here. Yes. I actually don't have a lot of experience drawing men because when I got into art, I was all excited about drawing hot chicks. I mean, it's what most guy artists are excited about. So, and I was like, I already know how to draw guys. Who wants to draw guys? Boring. But drawing cool looking guys, awesome, like superhero, tough dudes, is actually very fun and an art form in itself. It takes much skill. Much skill. All right, so let's go ahead and take the same measurements that we've done here, and let's go ahead and translate it into 3/4 perspective. I'll show you guys how to do that. Actually getting a little bit of a headache. What's up with that? Talking too much? Not talking enough. Because I took yesterday off. And also, I do have some interesting plans for tomorrow that might make me have to pre-record tomorrow's episode. But we'll see what happens with that. I got some other announcements for tomorrow for you guys as well. Some big life-changing announcements. But we'll get into that at another time. But rest assured, if there is no live show tomorrow, I will pre-record one, and we will be happy. All right, guys, so check it out. What I did was I created that same circle, divided that circle in half, and the way that I create this line is I decide what perspective we are drawing this in, right? All of our perspective lines are going this way. Not worrying too much about a vanishing point on this one, just because we're doing, 3/4, and we're not worrying too much about that. And the way that you divide a circle in half in perspective is the center line that goes through the circle is always going to be at the center points, right? It's always going to be there. That's where your ellipse is going to meet. An ellipse is the circle that you draw through something to divide it in a 3D space, right? So both edges of that ellipse will always meet at the center points of the circle. That's something that I always mess up. I always forgot about that. Or actually, it was something that I didn't realize for a while, right? So I was like, oh, I got to divide a circle in half, and then I just kind of like wing it. I was like, oh, it kind of looks like half, but it would actually not be right on. Okay, so same thing. Let's go ahead and take that same circle right there from here to here. And we're going to go ahead and drop this down, all right? Thinking about this in 3D space. So our X plane is going back, and our Y plane is going to be straight up and down. So let's go ahead and take this same measurement. You take this distance to this distance. You can go ahead and drop it down. Go ahead and drop, actually, wait. No. The center point of this circle is actually going to be right there, or the bottom point, right? Because you want to think about the other ellipse that's going through this, right? Actually, no, if our Y plane, oh no, or is it? No. The Y plane needs to be going like this, right? Because our ellipses follow, the outer edges of the ellipse follow the same edge, or follow the same line of the perspective. So our bottom line is going to be right there, just slightly above that, okay? So we're basically taking that same distance and we're dropping it down. And again, like I usually don't like draw out the exact measurements, but in case you were wondering about the exact calculations you wanted to do with a circle and a sphere, then that kind of shows you how to do it, how to lay out your ellipses. And that makes me yeah, that also brings me to the other point of I'm learning as I go. If the ellipse is dividing the sphere like that, that means that our Y plane is actually going to be going down like this. The Y plane is going to be going this direction, and the vanishing point can go down like that. Okay, so we're actually going to be measuring it down like this. Okay, so basically eyeballing that. Again, I don't want to get too technical because perspective is something that I know a little bit about, but I don't really. I think most of the time, unless you're drawing like an actual like mechanical object or a car or something like that, you don't need to worry too much about it. Use it as like basic guidelines as opposed to actual rules. All right. So we're going and drawing in that chin. We're going to raise it up a little bit. Let's sculpt that line a little bit more up because we know we raised that chin a little bit more. Let's draw in that jawline. It's up a little bit like that. And generally what I like to do for the head, or rather the skull, So I like to kind of bring it back just a tiny bit more, right? Because your skull isn't an exact, sphere. It's actually like a sphere, and then it has a little bit like extra on the front of it where your face goes, obviously. And you can do the same thing by actually bringing the chin and the face out a little bit, like that, right? But again, potato, potato, whatever floats your boat. We are working with the general rules, and I don't want to confuse you. So let's go ahead and get this started, okay? So we know that we have this line here, and just below that line, our eyes will begin. Let's go ahead and draw that center point up like that from the face. So we know we want our eyes to be existing here, and we put an eye between those, and we go here, right? And keep in mind the brow. I always tell people that if you're drawing the eyes here, right, looking this way, and they're in perspective, like the nose is here, you want to think about the brow comes out, so your eyebrows are actually going to be offset this way, right? They're not going to be directly above the eyes, like that, They're not going to be like little Mr. Potato Head things, like up there, like that, right? That's how you don't draw eyebrows. Eyebrows are offset because of the brow. So your brow line will come way out here. You want to offset your eyebrows like that. And then let's go ahead and take this edge right here, where this is, and let's go ahead and draw this out like that, right? The bottom of that circle, because it's in perspective, we're going to draw right out like that, and then the bottom of our nose is going to be occurring right there. You see how I did that? I didn't draw straight out and then draw the nose there, right? That's not going to work. You got to think about the perspective lines. Perspective is going back like this as well, right? You have this way, and also that way. X, Y, and Z. So your Z space is going to push the nose out like this, and then it's going to come right on back like that. Okay? And notice how we're just going about sculpting. Sculpting. I love sculpting. In fact, let me make this guy's head a little bit bigger so we can work a little bit closer to the other one, so you can see how I'm translating the two. Lovely. Lovely. The people speak. What are you guys talking about? The monocle. Someone's saying giving a monocle. Alright. Monocle makes it manly. Yeah. Actually, it does look kind of good. Manly men wear monocles, and that's a collared shirt with a tie. Yeah. I like it. Cool. All right, so continuing. Let's go ahead and drop this down. You want to think about that mouth again, right? So the mouth is also going to wrap around. This is another thing that I see a lot of people do, is when you're drawing the mouth, don't draw it straight across like that, right? You can, but if you're like really pushing that cartoony feel, but most of the time, even if your mouth is just at rest, it wraps around your face, right? It wraps around your face like this. Creates a little bit of a curve around like that. So it's funny because it'll almost look like a happy face if you just sit it there and then you draw some eyes. But because your mind interprets the information and sees this face as being face down, it won't look like a happy face if you do it right. Like that. I think a good way to help deter the happy face is just kind of kick the edge of it down a little bit, like that. Now let's go ahead and draw on that lip there. That's good. And I am dissatisfied with the chin. I want the chin to be more out. Should have a little bit more of a crimson chin going on there. And again, I'm just comparing these two. It's like that distance from the little shadow or goatee or soul patch, whatever that is, to there is about the same. So I think we can get away with that. And let's go ahead and do that. And let's go ahead and draw on those cheekbones. Remember, a good way to kind of memorize where the cheekbones is, when you're drawing a three-point perspective, or a what am I trying to say? 3/4 perspective, is follow the line of the nose up, right? And you will find, seek, and ye shall find the cheekbones. And the way I like to remember the cheekbones is they connect right into that little concave of the skull, right? So if you were to kind of draw it like that, kind of creates that little shape there. I'm just erasing guidelines as I go. Right? It creates that little temple, right? Your cheekbone connects right into your temple. And that is good. That is good. And then if you follow the bottom of the nose out, that gives you your ear. Top of the eye out, that gives you the top of your ear. And then we do the C3PO technique. For those of you who do not know what the C3PO technique, you should go check out. I think it was when I was rendering the realistic version of Kate. I think it's just a couple episodes ago. It's the realistic looking girl's face. And you can see the C3PO technique for drawing ears. My little technique that I discovered. If you know about. Again, following the nose back this way. And a good way to remember how to just line things up in general is like, okay, here's the point of the cheek here. So I know the point of the other cheek is going to occur right there, right? Because we draw a line straight through with the same perspective. So I know the other edge of the cheek is going to be occurring right there. Without fail. Okay, and quickly we can see our manly man face coming into play here. There we go. Good. And again, remember that brow. Really kick that brow out. I want to see that brow out for your manly man. I want to see it. Okay? Okay. Let's throw in a little bit more details. I'm going to go ahead and start erasing these guidelines. I usually tend to work very, very messy like this. I really like it. Because usually, especially when I'm doing comics, I'll end up just going over them again anyway. I'll end up going over these lines again anyway. So, and let's keep this guy's almond-shaped eyes that we had before. Kind of looks ticked off. And pay attention to how much the eyebrow actually overlaps the other eye. Like, see how much distance there is between here? And literally here, it's overlapping the other eye. This is helping to show the depth of the brows, how it looks different from each angle. And if you do that, it will make me happy. So do it! Okay? Alright. Let's go ahead, moving on. Let's go ahead and just draw on these little triangles. Same thing with the triangle. I'm going to show you how to do the triangle in 3/4 perspective. Okay? So you follow the bridge of the nose down like that, right? And then you draw the triangle up like that, and then you go ahead and shade that in, right? That's a cool way to remember how basically like that nose goes back. The planes of the nose go right back like that. Comes in handy. All right. Continuing. Now, one thing that I'm noticing that's a little bit different about this guy than this guy is I feel like his chin is still out a little bit more. So now we're going to use the magical crutch of Photoshop and the magic wand tool, or the lasso tool, to kind of kick this out a little bit more. Kick it out. Like that, right? Just that small change. Did you notice that small change? I'll show you again, just in case you missed it. There. Big changes. Little change, big result. Okay, that's called a kaizen. Those of you who know Japanese. That is called a kaizen. Small change, big result. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just make that chin a little bit further out. And yeah, just making sure that he has that nice, big, manly chin. Good. Okay, now let's go ahead and follow that edge of this up. Let's go ahead and throw in his little hairline there. And his sideburns there. Coming down right over there. Choose to have his sideburns kind of overlapping there a little bit. And then hairlines, I think, is another really cool thing. I don't really, I usually just kind of wing hairlines, but I like to think of like it kind of comes out and then it kind of follows that same kind of line for the edge of the temple, and it kind of comes up a little ways more. And then another thing is to make your characters look older. All you got to do is simply push their hairlines back. You know, like if you push it even further back like that, it's gonna make them look even older, right? But he's got like he's got a rounder hairline. So let's go ahead and just bring it up like that. And let's give him like a nice little flat top. And because he is in 3/4 perspective, we're gonna have to draw this flat top as well. Draw this flat top in 3/4. So I'm going to kind of structure it a little bit like, structure it kind of like this, right? This is very Chip Hazard looking. I like it. Let's go ahead and bring it right back. Actually, it's looking a little bit more like a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I like that. Let's kind of bring it back a little bit. And yeah, just feel free to play around. Like, notice how I kind of brought down just the edges of it, and automatically he just kind of looks a little bit more. It's still a flat top, but it's more reduced. Let's say. It's so funny. It literally looks like it's like a box on his head. And the way that you can kind of help that is just think of it more as like a circle, right? Think of a circle on his head like this. And then that'll automatically kind of round things out. See? So I think a big thing that tells the shape of his hair is actually going to be that shape that you choose to put on his head. Right? Whether it's going to be that or it's going to be lovely flowing locks of Fabio. Okay? And again, big neck. You want to think about the edge of that head, and the neck just like comes right off the back of the head. Okay? Flowing into our massive traps. Giant neck, kind of like that. His hair looks really funny. I really don't like that hair. I don't think I've actually ever drawn a flat top from this angle. That's funny. Let's see. What do I want to actually do with his hair? Let's give him some real hair now. So I still want it to be cool, not like cheesy. That actually looks good. Just kind of rounding it off a little bit. So it's still a little bit more crew cut, but it's a little bit more like kind of blended on the edges. Not so much just like a flat chop of the head. There we go. Give him some nice spikes so he looks a little bit more casual, relaxed. Relaxed but cool army dude. I like it. Alright, let's just go ahead and continue this up here. And then he's got like his giant muscles. Giant manly muscles. Like it! Alright guys, now let's go ahead and add our finishing touches. And then we're going to go ahead and open up the chat to questions and answers. I will answer your question, Catapults, as you throw things over the castle walls. But first, we have some things we need to do here. We need to add in our monocle in the proper perspective, because we think about our perspective line coming this way, so we know our ellipse edges are going to exist on that angle, right? The edges meet the same line. Right? Don't do this. Do not draw that. Don't do that. That is not the proper perspective. The edges of your ellipse must meet. Even though it seems, it really feels like counterintuitive. It's like, why would I draw it that way? But that is just the way the world works. Unless, of course, this monocle is tilted a little bit further back, but you just got to decide what perspective the monocle is in, right? Okay, so we got our dude there. And let's go ahead and finish off his clothes here. Give him that nice shirt there, tie, and big coat. Whoa, that is a big coat. That is a big guy in a big coat. Not a fat guy in a little coat. Even though I do love that too. Alright guys, so that is how you go about drawing your manly yet sophisticated and maybe closet nerd man. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and ask those of you who are participating live with me to throw your questions over the castle walls. I was going to say something, not throw. Cast your questions, type them in. I don't know. It's going to be epic. Type in your questions to your catapult, load them, light them on fire, and then cast them over the walls, and I will catch them, put them out, douse them. And then I will print out a little letter to you, a little love letter, and then I'll throw it over the edge of the castle wall, and it will be your answer. Until then, I'm going to go ahead and just go and darken these lines here. Because this is usually what I do. Like once I'm done with my sketches and I like to kind of start refining things, usually just kind of darken the lines a little bit. Just kind of go through and make sure that everything is looking A-okay. Make sure everything's looking A-okay. And I need to merge this properly. Let's merge that properly. And darken that properly. And again, I want to stress the point of, again, this is a cartoony, manly man face. This is like the Buzz Lightyear type thing, giant chin. If you want to do more realistic dudes, again, all you got to do is just make sure that your eyes are kind of a little bit more in the center of your face, right? And then really this will dictate a lot of what your style is and kind of what you're going for. And we can do a little bit more of like a realistic painting of a guy's face, similar to what we did with Kate last week. On another day, on another time. All right. All right. Erin Pinal is asking, how do you draw three-point perspective? All right, Erin, that is a great question. Let's see. Three-point perspective is a big thing, especially when you're drawing people, right? And it's not, I'm actually not the best three-point perspective. But if I were to use like 3 vanishing points, sometimes what I'll do, oftentimes, like say I'm drawing like a vehicle, I'll create one vanishing point, right? You have the horizon, and then I'll create one vanishing point like this, right? And then I'll draw like the, you know, the car here. You know, and actually, well, if the car's like that, then it needs to be more like that, right? I'm just going to draw like a really, really crappy car just to illustrate a point, right? So a big thing that you want to do is when you're drawing things like this is oftentimes, oh look, the ellipses aren't even on the right thing. Such a noob. Okay, so anyway, this is 1 point perspective, right? And but also, you know, you have, stop. Okay, so let me see if I can actually illustrate this properly. So the only difference between 1 point and 2 point perspective is if I were to take the same car and kind of drop it down like this, 2 point is basically where you take this horizon line and now you are modifying the horizon line as well, right? So the horizon line may be going like this. Is that what it is? See, this is why I don't give points on. This is why I don't give lessons on perspective yet, because oftentimes I don't know exactly what I'm talking about. The second perspective would be actually going up. Like you could have another perspective way the heck up here, right? And then all these lines, you know, of the car would be going this way, right? Oh, that's the other perspective. The other perspective is this way, right? So the last point of perspective would be, you know, whatever is going this way. So if you wanted to create, let's just make this into a box so I can more easily illustrate this. So yeah, basically you're going to be looking at something like this, right? It's basically just creating boxes and then deciding where you want your perspective lines to be, right? Man, that's really bad. But and it's because I'm trying to answer a question. But really, I think the best way to do perspective for me is I really like to do 1 point perspective. In fact, I'll just do a box this time. I'll just do a box. I'll do a 1 point perspective, right? Like this, make your horizon line. Right, so your box will look like that, right? And then what I like to do is basically, you know, if there's another point of perspective, I'll just make all the lines kind of parallel, right? So the box goes like this, and then these lines go back like that, right? So that's going to create like a pseudo 3-point perspective if you erase all of those. So if you're just to look at that box, it's a pseudo 3-point perspective. You've got this really like exaggerated vanishing point back here, and then these other lines are simply just almost exactly the same. Man, that was hard. I hope that made sense. Again, this is not a tutorial on 3-point perspective, so I actually need to learn a lot more about that before I move into that. But either do that or use the 3D software. Yes, that works too. All right, taking 2 more questions, and then we are going to go ahead and end up. Looks like we have we got a typo in issue 2. I need to go back and check that out. All right. Oh, Jabon is asking about Scion. Yes, guys, I got recently the email back from Scion that they did not, unfortunately, pick me. That is okay because I'm just going to keep on chugging along, keep on doing what I normally did, and one day the Emmamobile will be mine. I am not losing sight of creating the Emmamobile for myself in my own reality. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to be going to that convention. But you guys should still check it out and see all the awesome people who did win, all the people that don't have comics, and cheer them on as well and be happy for them. Alrighty. Last question coming in from Erin as well. Erin, you're just full of questions today. You just gotta know. You're just bugging me. How do you achieve a painterly feel, he is asking. Okay, so I think the difference between painterly versus kind of finished feels, right, is, okay, so I'm just going to illustrate by drawing these 2 spheres, aka balls. I said balls. All right, so let's go ahead and draw these 2 spherical balls here. Let's try that again. And I'll show you the difference, in my eyes, what separates painterly from realistic, okay? And as simple of verbiage as I can muster. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and darken these both in like that. And let's go ahead, actually, wait. For this sphere, actually I'm going to do this, because this also plays into it as well. All right, so let's go ahead and mask both of these very quickly. And I will show you the difference between painterly and realistic. Okay, so say you're painting both of these objects here, right? So if you're going to do, normally when you look at like a perfect sphere, like let's make them just like red. Let's make them red, why not? So I'm sure you've seen this exercise in your art classes and everything. When you're shading like a ball or a sphere, you always have like the core light up here, right? You have your core light up here, and then you have your little reflected light under here, and then oftentimes if it's on top of something, you'll have like your shadow, right? Your shadow like that. Okay? So that is a very kind of geometric and like more realistic look, right? But the way you achieve a painterly feel is basically going through with your objects and you basically paint in those details, right? And you can start with like a soft brush, like you can start with something like that, right? But then to achieve a painterly feel, I'll use something like my renderer brush, or the way I used to do it was I'd actually take like the old hard brush, but I highly recommend you don't do this now because it really wears on your hand and it really kind of, I don't know, I just don't think it's good. It's not good for your wrist. So I think just getting something with a little bit of texture in it, like see it's still round, but it has a little bit of texture in it. And using that, I think really, really helps out with like blending, and it's really, really fun to do. So basically, you lay in your basic colors, and oftentimes this is how I paint things. I'll lay in basic colors with gradients, and then I'll go in and I'll start alt-clicking. You'll notice every time the mouse is turning into that little eyedropper tool, that's just me clicking the alt button and clicking on the color, and then blending a little bit. Oftentimes I'll kind of blend out a little bit, select that color, blend with that. I'll just kind of do that. And then this right here, that little texture that's happening within that versus that, that is what makes the painterly feel to me. That is the difference. And then if you want to throw in like a little hot specular like that, you know, like doing things like that where you can actually see a little bit of the brush stroke happening if you want to like add some texture to the ball. like that, you know, like adding some like nicks and you know, like little scratches throughout it, you know. That's where kind of like the painterliness of your drawings is going to come in. And yes, that is how I go about doing more painterly type things, but still it has the underlying elements of a more geometric, realistic style to it. Alrighty, peoples! I understand we went a little bit short today, but because it's the KNKL show, usually I just like to do the tutorial and then head out. So I'm going to go ahead and end episode 74 of the KNKL show. Thank you guys once again for tuning in live, joining me on Ustream. Thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. If you're on YouTube, please make sure, if you have not read issue 2, it is out now and it's good to go. So I will place the link down in the description. You can simply click that and go read it. Have fun, tell your friends about it, and yes, enjoy it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and head out, guys. So yeah, you guys take care. And tomorrow, remember, I most likely am not going to have a live show, but I will at least do a pre-recorded special thing for you guys, and then I'll put that up for you. So be sure to look out for that. And yeah, you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you soon. Later!